You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 225 of Teach Better Talk. My name is Ray Hewart, and as always, I'm with my decently proficient co-host, Mr. Jeff Gargis. How are you, Jeff?
What'd you call me?
Decently proficient.
Decently proficient. Okay. That's funny.
That's
actually
funny,
really funny
like,
that
haha or funny hee hee?
well,
I don't know, but like funny haha or like
no, it's funny because you're pulling that because you and Chad had like a moment. Our guest Chad Lang had a moment like on proficiency
we
scales.
had more than a moment.
I know, but
there
like,
was a connection.
There was a connection with proficiency scales. And I was actually thinking that I was gonna have you talk about them, and then you used it in the intro, which was kind of cool. Kind of one of those like,
it's like we're
same
connected.
wavelength.
I know.
So we did get into that, and it became a part of a lot of the rest of the episode and conversations around some different things that Chad has going on. So I thought it'd be kind of a good lead into the episode for us to break down what a proficiency scale is. Like, what is that? How does that play into different things in education? Just in case somebody's listening that maybe isn't as familiar with proficiency scales as someone like yourself or Dr. Chad Lang would be. So can you break that down for us? Because I know like it's your jam. So like,
I do love this topic, and I do want to preface, we actually get into a great conversation later in this episode, and Chad has a lot of great insight that he shares. So I don't want to talk about it necessarily by quoting research or anything else. Let's just talk pure basics so that you have some background knowledge as then we build even more into this conversation as we get further into the episode. So proficiency scales are something that you'll see a lot if you've heard of anything related to standard-based grading. And so there's a lot of different areas that we could dive into with this idea, but let's just break it down to the basics. When we give students feedback, we want it to be direct. We want it to be personalized, and we want them to understand it, because if you give a student feedback and they don't understand it, you kind of wasted your time, because the feedback is hopefully to improve what they're working on, right? But as we're doing that, a lot of the research, a lot of the success we've seen in providing feedback should be based on the student's level of understanding. Meaning, if a student does something, don't just say good work. Don't just say, yep, you accomplished the task. But how can you give them direct feedback truly related to what they understand that got them to this successful point, or allowed you as the educator to identify it as an area of growth that they need to do further work in, right? Easy peasy. So as you look at proficiency scales, there's a lot of research behind how many tiers should be in your scale. It's pretty common that you'll see anywhere from 4 to 6 different levels of proficiency that the student can move up. But essentially, if you think of a ladder, guys, at the very bottom of the ladder is the lowest level. And that's just a student who has a lot of gaps, doesn't truly understand the concept, really going to need a lot of reteaching and growth. And that's going to be something that you work on with the student. And then you typically have a number of different levels, and then they've met your expectation. They're proficient in that skill. They've met mastery. So as you look at proficiency skills, you're probably doing it already. You are probably, when you're teaching your students, already thinking about, okay, Danny in the corner truly understands what she's talking about. She's probably ready for enrichment on this idea. Oh, Gage really needs some support, so I'm going to make sure to go help him. And as you're doing that, you choosing to communicate that level of success to the student can be easily implemented using a proficiency scale. And especially when you're sharing what the proficiency scale looks like in your classroom with your students, then you're creating this universal safe space, safe language to communicate growth towards understanding a concept. So super basic, Jeff, if you don't mind, I use a 3-tiered proficiency scale in my classroom. That is, to be honest, it's four levels. We'll go with 3. Super simple. Either a student needs development in an area, they have a basic understanding of that, or they have been proficient, their mastery. And so my students know these 3 levels. We use a stop light to like show them that they're good to go, or they need to whoa, slow down, or they should stop because we're missing a beat. So as we look at these levels of proficiency, this is really just allowing us, again, to communicate with students on their understanding level. And I was so excited when Chad shared this idea during his story about success. I was thinking that we were going to just derail the whole podcast. You're welcome for not doing that, friends. You're welcome.
We got close, but it was good. It was a good moment. It was good stuff. Good. So I appreciate that breakdown because that's going to lead in really well. I like when I can just get you rolling on there. So
yeah, I was totally just going and going.
So we a lot of times we joke that like with Chad Ostrowski that we just like put the quarter in and push go. Every now and then I do that for you. I'm just like, and go, Ray. This
is my favorite topic. We're talking about grading and student feedback. Hello, it's the best.
So getting into the episode, Dr. Chad Lang is the Director of School Improvement for a district in Iowa. He's been a classroom teacher. He's been a athletic director. He's been a principal. He's been an assistant principal. Guy has done a lot of stuff. He is doing a lot of stuff now. I really enjoyed it. We kind of right off the bat get into sort of where his challenges have been with this crazy school year right now as a leader and what they're doing there. I really enjoy what he's focused on, what he's trying to do. So anything else outside of proficiency scales you need people to be focused on for this episode, Ray?
Well, everything. He's got a podcast, guys. Go subscribe, rate, and review. Go follow him on
I love the premise for
Twitter.
his podcast, too. I really love that. We don't touch it till later on, but yeah, sorry. Yes. So
just
yeah,
listen
everything
all the way
raises
through. It just gets better. It just gets better and better and better. Trust me.
I like that. That's the way to go. It just gets better. And with that, let's get into the Better episode 225 with Dr. Chad Lang.
Hey guys, it's Ray. We will get right back to this episode. However, I am so just overjoyed, truly, to give a big shout out to Jennifer Apple, member of the Teach Better team, and just all-around incredible educator all-star, who just published her 2nd children's book. I love this because all of our children's books are part of a series. This is book 2, and you guys know I love puppies, and it is all about the animals that not only she has in her life, but also the incredible adventures they get into. You'll definitely want to check out this series and her brand new book that comes out November 20th. Please make sure that you go grab your copy. This is a perfect Christmas gift for like anyone in your family. And hey, I even am going to use it with my 6th graders in the classroom when we're working on mentor tech. So, hey, you can go grab this book on Amazon, Etsy, or awardwinningculture.com. And I cannot wait to see all the photos on social media with this book launch. All right, guys, let's get back to the episode.
All right, we're here and we are chatting with Dr. Chad Lang. And Chad, man, it is so great to have you on the podcast. Super excited to get to know you more, to dive in, to learn more about your story and everything you got going on. Before we get too far into things, how are you feeling right now?
You know what? I'm feeling pretty good. Having the opportunity to make some decisions with our administrative team this week to really support our teachers and give them a little bit more time back, take care of themselves, particularly on days that we already had scheduled for our students to be either early out or our volleyball team happened to make it to state this week. So there's some early outs and things for people to be able to travel. And for those that didn't want to travel, they're able to utilize some time in their classroom. So, that's a good thing. Time is one of the most precious commodities. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, I love that. We always joke, Jeff. What do we have to say about time? Time is like closet space, right? You always use what you have and you always want more.
That's exactly right.
I like that. That's good. Chad, I'm as a teacher, I just want to thank you for giving us time. I know I don't teach with you, but all teachers love the opportunity to have more time. So fantastic. Before we get started, I do want to make sure our listeners kind of learn a little about you, kind of answering that age-old question of what do you do? So do you mind kind of sharing that with us?
Sure. I'm in my 2nd year as the Director of School Improvement at Glenwood Community School District in Glenwood, Iowa. It's about 15 minutes southeast of the Omaha, Nebraska metro area. So we're just across the border from Nebraska on the Iowa side. So it's an awesome position. I get the opportunity to really be a lead learner for our teachers and our administrators in all the areas of curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Love that. So Chad, right now, as a leader in your district, well, first off, what's your situation there right now with COVID and everything? Are you guys face to face? Are you hybrid? Are you virtual? What's your status?
You know what? We're really lucky. We've had the opportunity to start 100% in person, or I should say about 96% in person. We have some options that are asynchronous and a synchronous option for those people that are medically fragile, we've kind of cleared with their families ahead of time. We're a school district of about 2,000 students. So on most given days, and we started on August 20th, and we're still rocking and rolling. We've been very, very fortunate. I think our kids do a really, really great job of being conscientious of best practices around hygiene. I think our teachers have done a phenomenal job, and I think our community's done a great job to the best of our abilities. And so we're still going. We're trying to support our teachers as much as we can. We have some teachers who teach students synchronously at the same time for those medically fragile or for those families that are not able to attend in person. So that's a huge challenge in thinking about how we can support them the best way possible, either through professional development or just general support of any kind. So in comparison around the country, we're probably very, very lucky in Southwest Iowa for the most part. But as you know, that could change. We don't take any of that for granted.
Absolutely. And so what has, as a leader there, what has been the biggest challenge so far now that we're, 2 months into the year and so much just seems to be changing all over the country all the time? What's been the biggest challenge right now for you and your staff?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, for me personally, I sort of lead the mantle of carrying school improvement for our district. And so I'm always anxious to want to make strides in that area. And I sort of come at strife and stress by jumping into the work. And so it's been important for me as a leader to make sure that I understand that not everybody takes on stress that way. And so I'd like to keep a lot of things moving and gain some ground on some of the curriculum work and assessment work that we've been focusing on the last year and a half and just supporting people in that work. And so carrying that mantle forward has been a challenge because you have adults and obviously students as well, but adults who have such diverse needs on how they need to be supported. And some people are really put off by that. Like, I can't believe you were talking about trying to rewrite the curriculum, or I cannot believe that we even want to discuss professional development for our PLC. And we have other people who are like, I just need to do something quote unquote normal. So I think for me as a leader, the largest challenge is just to calibrate. We have about 150 plus full-time staff, from instructional coaches to socio-emotional learning liaisons, to obviously classroom teachers. And from a PK-12 setting, it's just a diverse group of folks that all want to do the best they can. But in terms of carrying that mantle forward on initiatives that are, 3 to 5 year goals, and, what do we do? When is it okay to ask to move forward in some of our long-term initiatives or mid-range initiatives and not push people over the edge? I think that's been my largest challenge.
Yeah, it really is. It's such an important thing, man. So listening and really diving into all those diverse voices and needs is so always important, but just so highlighted and enhanced right now. Appreciate you answering that for us. One of the questions that we always talk about on this podcast is built around failure. And I always say that I've been really fortunate to fail a lot in my life because it's taught me everything that I need to know to be where I am today. I'm hoping you can share a story with us by the time that you've had a failure in your life. Kind of take us there with you. What happened? How did you overcome it? And what did you take away from that experience?
Well, I think the best example is one that I share with teachers and administrators alike. And in my first year as an assistant principal, I was an assistant middle school principal at a small school district a little bit outside the Kansas City metro area. And I was also the district activities director. So I was wearing kind of these dual hats. And it was really, really important to me that our teachers understood and felt that I could support them from a curricular standpoint. And I wasn't just someone who was an athletic director with an assistant middle school title. And one of the things, and I walked into a situation where our principal was a 20-year veteran. It's not like that there was a lot of desire and need to support another early career administrator. And one of the things that I thought was really important is that we should be getting good feedback from our students about what they think about our curriculum, our resources. And I sort of jumped right in probably towards the end of the first semester by creating a little Google survey. And at that time, our middle school was grades 5 through 8 and about 100 kids in each class. And I thought, this would be great. Our students could fill this out. Like, what do you like best about your class? Is there anything your teacher does that really helps your learning? I mean, what I felt like were pretty high level, kind of glossed over questions. None of them were with deficit mind in the way they were structured. They were all pretty much right down the middle of the road, I felt like. And my reason for wanting to do that was to sort of triangulate what we were observing and to have better conversations and set goals with our staff. And it was a disaster. The students did a really good job for the most part, and we got all kinds of data back, but I did a terrible job of front loading with our staff. I assumed that basically, without really knowing the staff more than 3 or 4 months, that, they probably want to see data of what their kids think about how their courses are going and so on and so forth. And I had definitely read Simon Sinek's work prior to this, and I did not start with the why. And so I was coming at it from, a growth mindset, setting goals. They were coming at it from all kinds of different places. I definitely had some visitors in my office with some very poignant conversations like, are you trying to fire people? I mean, from everybody from, employment standpoint to, validity. Like they were concerned that, 10-year-olds are not going to be able to know and answer a question. And so I learned a very, very valuable lesson, which is the act in and of itself to get feedback, anecdotal feedback, qualitative feedback from your kiddos is a great idea. But the culture around the expectations just wasn't put in place. And I didn't explain the why and why it was valuable and why it was important. And it came off completely wrong. And so I had some major, major trust issues with some staff, and it just took time. I ended up being at the district 6 years, and I think most of those wounds were healed, but it was a challenge. And so I learned very valuable to start with the why and reach out to folks and maybe look at some of those stalwarts in your district or in your building to, pick their brain before you launch into something, which I was coming from with good intentions. So I'd say that was a failure, but I've learned from it.
Great lesson pulled from Matt about leading with that why and understand where everyone's coming from, how they look at the processes and what you're doing and what they might assume or worry about, and having those conversations. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's flip it around now. Let's talk about a successful moment you've had. And this can be something big or something small, but share with us what happened, why was it a success for you, and then what'd you take away from that experience?
As a classroom teacher in Missouri, 2008, 2009, I was a high school government teacher. I was a head boys basketball coach. I was energetic and just finished my master's degree. And I was lucky enough to be asked to be on a standards-based grading cohort, just 8 teachers in our building to look at, implementing and discovering practices around, grading, and really looking at Ken O'Connor's work on fixes for broken grades and just starting that animal. And in 2 years, we did some great work, and the district decided to move forward. And I'd say just the success that came out of that, we certainly went ahead and implemented standards-based grading at that high school and in the district. But something that I still carry forward today in my role, we're a standards reference grading district here in Glenwood, Iowa as well, is the use of proficiency scales with students. We in particular use Marzano's model, but there's a lot of different templates you could use to design proficiency around learning targets. And I just think that it's the best, most transparent and consistent way of communicating learning expectations to kiddos that I've found. And it was really a game changer for me in my classroom in terms of overall student achievement, building trust, having consistency, having students track their own learning. And a lot of the training that I do with our staff now is about, looking at the proficiency scale as an instructional tool as well. To Hattie's work, how are students tracking their own learning? How do we codify them? How does a student notate when they're 17 years old, where they're at in the proficiency of learning, of their own learning? And then, all kinds of strategies to use them as what I call the placemat for the conversation, either with the student, with the whole class, with their parents or guardians. I used to use those things all the time as a classroom teacher, and I really felt like it was the basis, sort of that crux of the trust relationship. It put us on common ground, though it got us away from the guessing game of, the book says I should know this, and the movie said that, or the film clip said this, or the article said that. And then, you discussed we had a lecture on this, and it was just everybody's guessing game on what I was going to be assessed on. And it's just really been a career success for me. And I don't know if that's just the way my personality is in terms of how I implement it in the classroom. But I think with all the folks that we've provided professional development with over the years, they've been able to modify and alter the use of proficiency scales to also build some trust and just be more clear about the learning expectations, really getting down to the point where We work with the students on, you underline the verb, you tell me what it means, underline the verb or circle the verb and underline the noun and all that unpacking work, like actually teaching our students to do that as well. So I'd say that was definitely a success and is a success for us even today.
Chad, I'm such a fan of that entire answer you just gave. Like, proficiency scales changed me as an educator, and especially with the implementation of mastery learning with proficiency scales. Like, I'm so thrilled that you were not only a part of that as an educator, but obviously in your role now and the work that you continue to do. It truly changes just the environment of learning. And I'm so glad that that was your success, because I have seen so many educators struggle, and then find such massive success teaching that way. That's so exciting.
Yeah, that's great, Ray. I mean, I have a lot of future ideas to go forward. I mean, some of them involve, if we employ proficiency scales so well as our staff to our students, do we want proficiency scales for expectations of ourselves? Should our SELs have a proficiency scale? Should our instructional coaches have a scale?
Yeah.
And would that be more clear for us? I mean, I feel like all the awkward conversations or miscommunications sometimes are just because I wasn't really sure that was what the goal was for me.
Sure.
Good people will do good work if they know what the target is.
No, that line right there is gold. People will do good work if they know what the goal is. And if you are using proficiency scales to help you be more clear and give direct feedback, I mean, isn't that exactly what we're trying to do with our students?
Right. And then I think an ancillary goal that I have is we have in Iowa workforce development, collaboration. So more of the career ready than just the college ready. And I think I want to have some conversations and show proficiency scales to those people in the industry and to, make sure that there's consistency in terms of they understand how it works and how it could be. I could get some practical examples from the workforce and say, wouldn't it be awesome? Because there's so much learning progression that happens within so many different career fields. They may not be clarified in a progression on a scale, but it's the same basic principle. And I think that would give me some great real world examples of a learning progression in fields that are interesting to our students that aren't college preparatory. So that's just another avenue that I'm looking at exploring.
1000%. You are totally speaking my language. I'm so, Jeff, you know that I could talk to Chad about this for literally the next 3.5 hours. And it's going to be we have to move forward because this is literally my jam. I love that you brought this up.
That's awesome.
I do have to say though, and it sounds silly asking you this next question, but question 4 always has to do with what gets you excited about education and what you do. To be honest, I'll just answer this for you. Proficiency scales are keeping me excited, but I'm going to see if you take this a different direction just for the sake of, taking us in this podcast on a different journey. What's really keeping you excited right now about education, the work you're doing, and everything in between?
I think that proficiency scales is just emblematic of a larger goal that keeps me excited about my work, which is sensemaking. I feel like in this work in school improvement and everywhere I've been, not just as a classroom teacher or an assistant principal or whatever it might be, that it doesn't matter where I go, teachers feel this additive approach, this stacking effect. It's another 3-letter acronym, one after the other. And in and of themselves, the thought, the philosophy, whether it's PLC or PBIS or RTI or whatever it might be, it's not necessarily a program. It could be a philosophy and so on. Are great, but these people didn't work together. And so, depending on how districts operate and make programming decisions, it has an additive effect on staff. And so oftentimes districts haven't done sense making of the philosophical work that they do around their mission and vision, and they don't really know what their pillars are as they relate to each other. And so, for example, with proficiency scales and learning targets, just unpacking the verbs, and making sure that they're at the right place in the scale is critical, but actually it makes a bigger difference in PLC when we're trying to work on common formative assessments to answer the 4 questions of before. There should be alignment there. And then it adds a third element, which when you bring into our principles is what's the instructional congruency? Are the instructional strategies consistent with describing X? And have we done any buildup in a progression? Have we worked with our staff to help them understand that identifying XYZ helps to describe XYZ? and how it all fits together, this sort of conjunctive integrated approach. So what gets me excited is that I get to help do that work, is to make sense for our staff, to dovetail programming and deployment in a way that a full-time teacher doesn't have time to think about more broadly. And so the hope is that it doesn't become an additive effect, it becomes a sensemaking effect. Like, the better I become in this area, for example, writing quality summative assessments in our curriculum department, helps me have better assessment literacy when we write formative assessments as a group. And so, but you have to facilitate that conversation. You have to create some images to help folks move along that. And that's exciting to me. I mean, I want to make people feel like they're more efficient in the work that they do without having this stacking and additive effect for our staff.
Yeah, absolutely. So going along those lines, what is your best piece of advice that you would either give a new teacher, a veteran teacher? Really, everybody sometimes feels like new teachers. What's your best piece of advice that educators should be considering right now?
Well, I think any educator right now, and I'm sure most people have felt this way, is that they have to model being a lead learner for their colleagues and for their students. I do a lot of recruitment in my work in this position, so I get to talk to a lot of seniors in college or juniors in college, or just in the old traditional recruitment. I'm having to come up with some different ways now, but it's the same thing I share with them. It's the same thing I would share with anybody who's in a rut. Or, are you really modeling lead learner for your kiddos and your colleagues? Are you flexible? Are you aiming to collaborate? If students, we all know that students watch us like a hawk, right? Sort of see in the grocery store effect. Do students ever see you ask for help? Do students ever see you lean across the hall and say, take a look at this question with me? And so I feel like that's such a great piece of advice, and at least that's why I'm giving it, right? But I just think that brings a little humility to the role, and that, if we want to ask kids to fail forward, they sort of have to see us do that. Now, we're not just willy-nilly deploying instructional strategies and seeing what sticks, but having the opportunity to collaborate and fail forward and to communicate with your kids. Like, we're going to try this. This is going to be a huge challenge for both of us. But I was talking to Mr. So-and-so in science, and I thought that I had heard such good things about that we should try to do it in ELA, or, this, in my case, I was a social studies teacher. So it builds capacity, it builds collective efficacy, which we know is right up there for Hattie's metacognitive, all of Hattie's work. And it's just an easy way to do that. But modeling that lead learner doesn't mean professional development all the time. I think sometimes the best and brightest minds for your growth are in your hall and in your building. And, how often do we do that? And how often do we model that for our kids? So sometimes I just share with the students, if they don't actually see me collaborating, which they usually don't because they're not there, I tell them about it. I was talking to so-and-so about this, and they said that you guys really like that, and that seemed to really help. And we're gonna try. It's gonna be a stretch. What do you guys think? So that collaborative partnership with the students, that we're in this together. That's really, I think that's so critical in relationship building, but also in just showing some humility and not really being the sage on the stage, but thinking how you can do that, because that's what we're gonna have to do to solve problems in the future. Is be vulnerable, fail forward. Don't always come at things like we have all the right answers.
It is so important, modeling those behaviors and the skill sets and things that we want our students to embrace, like failing forward, like being collaborators, like having those conversations. That's so important. I love that advice so much. Let's keep it going here. Let's do the next 6 questions. Your goal, Chad, is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You ready to go?
You bet.
All right. What is one EdTech tool you could not live without?
I think for me, Calendly has been a game changer right now. So I do so much virtual meetings. I like to be able to be booked in a slot.
Give us a book you're reading right now.
I love The Range by David Epstein. It's about being a generalist in a specialized world. I'm also reading Most Likely to Succeed by Tony Wagner and Dintersmith. And Small Changes and Big Impact by Reibel and Thede is on the list, is on the docket.
Who do we need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today?
I think at Jared Smith, PhD. Jared is a superintendent in South Tama in Iowa. He is definitely a high-rising leader in Iowa and would be an awesome follow for all things leadership, has a podcast, has a blog. Really great tidbits for all stakeholders. And of course, for my standards reference grading folks, most people know Rick Wormeli at Rick Wormeli 2. But Matt Townsley, I don't know if that's a name you guys know, but Matt is definitely a a published author in standards-based grading. He's at MC Townsley, Tonsley. He's an assistant professor at University of Northern Iowa and an author. Just published a new book with Nathan Ware. So I would check those guys out for sure.
Give us a good YouTube channel, website, or podcast for educators to check out.
Well, outside of my podcast, which we're in the filming of the first season, I don't know if it's great, so I'm not going to give you that. But it's we can talk about that later. But I would check out Matt Townsley, Dr. Matt Townsley's website. It's http mctonsley.net, mctownsley.net. He has all kinds of curated like top 10 list of grading and assessment literature for parents and for teachers and for PLCs, and just keeps it up to date because he's an author and a researcher in that area. It's fantastic.
Give us a daily, monthly, or weekly routine every educator should get into.
I would be lying if I said I did this every week, and sometimes I make up for it the next week, but I try to write 3 to 5 personal note cards of thanks and gratitude to each and everybody that I can that deserves it. So that would be everyone, but anybody from the custodian. I'm in buildings all the time. I'm very, very fortunate, to obviously classroom teachers, my administrative assistant, and the list goes on and on. It's been great for me.
I love that one. And what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I had an athletic director tell me one time, if you're making decisions on what's best for kids, you can't be wrong. And I know it's really cliche, but I think it's a good one.
I love that one.
It's a good one. So let's talk, before we go, Ray, I know you have one more question to ask, but before we go in there, you mentioned your podcast. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Tell us about the podcast. Where's it at? What's you said you're starting the first season? Is it already out? Is it available right now?
There is a pilot episode, and there is the very first episode that is on iTunes and Spotify, and Amazon Music has podcasts now too, and it's on there. And it's called Learning with Interesting People. And you can follow on Twitter at learn_W_PPL. It is outside my comfort zone, but it keeps me engaged in work of all these professional learning networks out there, and it gives me the opportunity to have these conversations. So, of course, I'm thrilled to be a guest on your guys' podcast, but I like these conversations. I get the opportunity to collaborate and connect across really the world. And what I really observed, and the reason why I started the podcast is, number one, it just feeds that professional learning for me. But number two, as I work through interviewing candidates and teachers, we have always asked some questions around, tell me about your favorite teacher and tell me about your least favorite teacher. And watching their faces when they talk about people who have really helped them learn, not just in school, but in life, kind of inspired me to say, well, I know a lot of really interesting people that aren't teachers. I wonder how they learn, and how did they learn when they went to school, like formally, and how did they learn now? So it allows me to reach out to my small network and then growing into a network of others and just have that conversation for 30, 40 minutes to talk about how do you learn today? And so my hope is that, people can listen to it and transfer one type of learning from one job field or one career field or one vocation into their own lives, and not just in education, but obviously in, how you pick up hobbies. And it's really interesting. I'm already seeing themes. I've interviewed half a season so far, and like I said, there's two online. I'm trying to publish them all at once so that people can kind of pick and choose. So you have to bear with me. It's not as great of quality as I would like. I'm producing it all on my own and all that kind of stuff. But we have some interesting guests on the docket. That's for sure. We've talked to a university police chief. We have a retired, collegiate choral music director. We have a former national champion Nebraska Cornhusker who is a motivational speaker on the docket, Des Moines Adams. Matt Townsley, who I mentioned earlier, has committed to an episode. So it's going to be fun. It is fun.
I love that, the premise behind it. That's an awesome format, and I love the idea of talking to other people outside of education, how they learn and going through that. So that's really cool. So learning with interesting people. I love it. So guys, make sure you go check that out.
Yeah, in addition to checking that out, I do want to make sure, Chad, that everybody gets to follow the work you're doing in addition to being like a podcast listener to the work as well. Would you mind kind of sharing how people can stay connected with you personally?
Sure, absolutely. I think Twitter is the best way, honestly. It's typical of me to not just have one simple way. I have really 3 handles, at Chad_M capital L-A-N-G, Chad _M Lang, just my name, is kind of my universal account that it's anything from football to grading and assessment and leadership, all things leadership. And then of course for the podcast, it's at learn _W _people. And that'll be kind of updates on who the guests are and some bios on them. And then of course, just following all great leaders of leadership and learning. And then you can actually check out my school improvement one as well. It's at GCSD school _IMP. And that stands for Glenwood School Improvement. And that is really a connection of folks that are in that work of curriculum and instruction and assessment, and then all kinds of good things around grading and assessment as well. So there's all kinds of ways you can connect with me that way. And I said Twitter would probably be the best way.
All right. You can find all the links, all the resources, and everything we mentioned in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as the really important links for connecting with Chad and keeping the conversation going. So make sure you head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and a review, we'd really appreciate that as well. Let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and connect with these amazing educators, and share this podcast with them. Chad, this was great. I really appreciate taking some time and talking with us and sharing your story and your insight and getting Ray all pumped up about what you're doing. And I love when our guests get Ray super excited, and she gets all crazy on the excitement part. So,
dude, how do you not get pumped for proficiency scales? Come on, I'm
I love it. Well, and what I love is when he's talking about it, I'm sitting here going, Ray's getting pumped. She's loving this. And then you confirm that. So I appreciate everything you do, Chad, and appreciate you taking some time and hanging out with us. Thank you.
It was my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on.
Until next time, let's get out there. Let's teach better.